Breaking now. CISA added CVE 2026-53362 to the Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog today, August 27, 2026, and the federal remediation deadline is August 30th. This is a Linux kernel issue, so the affected product family sits under servers, workstations, cloud hosts, appliances, and container platforms across the world. The stakes are simple. If your Linux fleet includes vulnerable kernel builds, treat this as a short window patch event, not a routine backlog item. CISA lists this as a Linux kernel unspecified vulnerability. NVD's description points to the IPv6 networking code, specifically a fix in the kernel for accounting for a frag gap on a paged allocation path. The affected function named in the advisory text is _IP6 append data. The CVSS score is 7.8, rated high. The vector is local, with low privileges required and no user interaction. The impact ratings are high for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. In plain English, this is not described as a remote internet-to-root bug. It is described as a serious local kernel exposure, once an attacker already has some level of access. The reason this became urgent is KEV membership. CISA's Known Exploited Vulnerabilities Catalog is not a list of interesting bugs. It is a list CISA uses when there is evidence of exploitation in the wild. That changes prioritization immediately. The EPSS probability shown here is low, at 0.003 in the 0.18 percentile, but EPSS is a forecast, and KEV is a signal based on observed exploitation. For defenders, observed exploitation wins. CISA also tied this entry to BOD 2604, risk-based update guidance, and forensics triage requirements, which means agencies must handle both patching and evidence preservation seriously. Potentially affected organizations are any that operate Linux systems using vulnerable kernel builds. That includes physical servers, virtual machines, developer workstations, cloud instances, network or security appliances running Linux under the hood, and Kubernetes or container hosts. The key phrase is vulnerable kernel builds. Linux distributions often backport security fixes without changing to the newest upstream kernel version. So do not judge exposure from the major version alone. Red Hat, Ubuntu, Debian, SUSE, Oracle, Amazon Linux, and appliance vendors may all publish their own package names, fixed builds, and mitigation notes. Your source of truth is your vendor's advisory and installed kernel package status. The practical danger is post-compromise leverage. CVSS says local access, low privileges, no user interaction, unchanged scope, and high impact across confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That combination matters because attackers often chain issues. A foothold from stolen credentials, exposed management access, a vulnerable web app, or malware on a host can make a local kernel bug much more valuable. At that point, the kernel is the trust boundary. A failure there can threaten sensitive data, system integrity, and uptime. CISA has not listed known ransomware use for this CVE. The field is unknown. That does not lower the operational priority after KEV inclusion. Start with asset inventory. Identify Linux machines, their distribution, their kernel package, and their running kernel. Compare that against your vendor's advisory for CVE 2026-53362. Remember that a patched package may be installed but not active until the system boots into the fixed kernel. Prioritize internet-facing systems, bastion hosts, VPN-adjacent systems, shared shell environments, build systems, and container worker nodes. Also check appliances if the vendor exposes Linux kernel versioning or publishes a security bulletin. If you use managed cloud images, look for cloud provider notices and image refresh guidance. The question is not only whether a fix exists, it is whether the fixed kernel is installed and running. CISA's required action is to apply mitigations in accordance with vendor instructions while following BOD 2604 and CISA's forensics triage requirements. For federal civilian agencies, the deadline is August 30th, 2026. That is a 3-day window from addition to KEV. For everyone else, use that date as the urgency anchor. Patch through your normal trusted repositories or vendor update channels. Schedule reboots so systems actually run the fixed kernel. If a vendor provides a mitigation before a full patch, apply it where it fits your environment and document the exception. Do not skip testing for critical workloads, but keep the test cycle tight. This is now an exploited vulnerability. Detection should focus on signs around the host, not on trying to reproduce the bug. Look for unusual local account activity, unexpected privilege changes, new or modified setuid files, suspicious kernel messages, unexplained crashes, and abnormal process behavior after low-privileged access. Review authentication logs, endpoint telemetry, kernel logs, EDR alerts, and recent administrative actions. Because NVD's description points to IPv6 kernel handling, include network and host telemetry that could show unusual IPv6-related errors, but avoid assuming every IPv6 event is malicious. For systems that appear suspicious, preserve logs, memory and disk evidence where your process allows, and follow CISA's forensics triage direction before rebuilding. Bottom line, CVE 2026-53362 is now in CISA's KEV catalog as of today, August 27, 2026. It affects the Linux kernel, carries a high CVSS score of 7.8, and has a federal remediation deadline of August 30th. The public description points to an IPv6 kernel fix, and KEV means exploitation has been observed. Check your Linux fleet, confirm vendor-fixed kernels, reboot into the patched version, and monitor for suspicious local activity. If this brief helped you prioritize the response, subscribe to the Daily Ranked CVE Brief for rapid, defense-only coverage of newly ranked and newly exploited vulnerabilities.